vous. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend back. I know it often feels short for those of us that are making our ways to further parts of the country, but it's nice to see everybody this morning. This is the third meeting of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Industry and Technology. Just a reminder, please, for the benefit of our interpreters who work so hard on our behalf, that if you are using your earpiece and it's plugged in when not in use, please make sure that it is on the sticker in front of you in order to avoid feedback and other things that can be harmful to their well-being. OK, collègues, nous sommes ici ce matin dans une réunion pour discuter les affaires du comité.
We are here to discuss the committee's affairs. I understand that there have been some excellent discussions that have taken place during the last few days.
Conversation between the parties over the course of the past few days, which I hope will allow us to move rather swiftly through this morning's meeting and provide the opportunity for a good amount of future business to occupy the few months that we have ahead of us. So with that, I know there are a few members who would like to present some motions this morning. So Mr. Bardizzi, once we're done dealing with that, Monsieur Saint-Marie, and I hope that colleagues have, I believe, Madame Clerk, you have a copy of...
We do, that's also been distributed.
Yeah, what was intended to be presented should have been distributed. So, Mr. Bardizzi, I'll pass the floor to you, sir.
Great. And thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Clerk. And this is the same motion that was distributed electronically a few minutes ago. En français puis en anglais. Do you want me to read the entire motion? Yeah. Okay. En français, conformément au paragraphe.
That pursuing to Standing Order 108 and given the imperative for Canada, self-reliance in national defense and security, and the significant level of investment announced, the committee studied the opportunity to use a defense industrial strategy to regenerate and further develop sovereign capabilities of Canada's industrial ecosystem and procurement for Canadian businesses, particularly when it comes to aerospace, digital technology, cybersecurity. The study would also look at other sectors related to defense, such as technology, digital technology, cybersecurity, vehicle and arms manufacturing, heavy industry, scientific research, advanced materials, and bioeconomy, and that the committee invite representatives from the Department of National Defense and the Department of Innovation, Science, and Economic Development to appear in this study. That the committee hold a minimum of 6 meetings on this study that will happen parallel to the study in productivity and investments in capital, and that we present the conclusions to the House.
2? No?
I think it's okay in English.
Okay.
Yeah, everyone's got a copy of it in front of them, I believe. Okay, thank you, Mr. Bardizzi. Madame Dancho, floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the Liberals bringing back this motion. We broadly support it, though I would make one amendment, which I'll move now. Rather than reading the entire study, I'll just, unless colleagues would appreciate that, I'll just, it's a very small amendment, so I think we'll put it together rather easily. So it's in the second paragraph, third line. I'll read it as amended, that the committee invite ministers and representatives from the Department of National Defense and the Department of Innovation, Science and Economic Development. That is my amendment, and again, it's just to include the ministers in this study. I think, again, I made this point last time, but I'll make it again today, that I appreciate that Liberal members and this committee are interested in reviewing a potential defence industrial policy for Canada. I think that's a quite a significant area that we can focus on as a committee, quite a robust area of study, and I think it would be certainly worthwhile that the ministers come and speak to us about that. In particular, I know Minister Jolie has spoken publicly on social media about her position on this quite frequently since her appointment, so I would imagine that she would welcome the opportunity to come and speak to the committee for her perspective on potential industrial policy in the defence space at this committee.
Okay, so colleagues, just a reminder, particularly for those who are still new to Parliament and learning the ropes of how the parliamentary committee system works, we had a motion that was presented. We now have an amendment that's been presented, which means that we will commence a discussion should there be speakers on the amendment. Once we deal with the amendment, we will then move on to the main motion, either as amended, if agreed upon, or in its original form. Monsieur Sainte-Marie, vous avez quelque chose à ajouter?
Mr. St. Marie, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Mr. Guglielmin, I wasn't sure if your hand was up. Okay, so you'll be following Mr. Saint-Marie. Gabriel, à vous.
The floor is yours, Gabriel. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So obviously I'm going to support the motion, and I also support the amendment, which is an invitation to the Minister to participate in a study of this scale. It seems utterly justified. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. St. Marie, for your approval.
Mr. Falk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd also like to speak in support of Ms. Dancho's amendment because, while departmental officials provide value insight to the committee, really what we're talking about here is decisions and directions at the highest level of government. So the ministers of defense and industry, they play key roles in shaping our defense and industrial strategy, and their direct participation is essential. Conservatives are ready to work collaboratively on this important study. However, for us to fully understand the government's positions here, ministers responsible must be present to answer our questions and provide clarity on their priorities. So I think having them here will strengthen the study and demonstrate a commitment to transparency and meaningful oversight. Thank you.
Mr. Falk, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I too will be supporting the amendment from Ms. Dancho to ask the minister to come here. The reason I think it's important is because we need to hear what the government is thinking. It wasn't that long ago, and Prime Minister Carney had promised us that defense spending would be focused more on Canadian manufacturing, Canadian suppliers. And just today, the media is reporting that the Canadian Army is moving ahead with a $5 billion purchase from the U.S. manufacturing defense sector. And so I think we need to know really what's the government's position on Canadian manufacturing when it comes to defense spending. Are we going to focus it on Canadian sources, or are we going to focus it on the American sources? And so I think we need to get clarification from the minister as to what the government is thinking, and that's why I think it's important that the minister attend.
Thank you very much, Mr. Falk. Seeing no further speakers, I'm going to call the question here. Always try to drive things first. I'm going to look around the table to see if we've got agreement. I'm seeing from the Liberal side, yes. Le Bloc a déjà mentionné. Conservatives, I presume you are all in favor.
Bloc has already said.
Amendment is passed. So, colleagues, does anybody wish to speak on the motion as amended? Okay, seeing no further speakers, same process. Is there any opposition? Okay, we'll deem the motion adopted. Okay, Monsieur Saint-Marie, je pense...
Mr. Saint-Marie, I believe that you have your own motion that you would like to present to the committee.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Chairman, yes, I'm going to be presenting a motion that suggests that we should be looking at artificial intelligence. I will not go into details. Some of our colleagues had said, yes, the motion is quite large, and perhaps we should be looking at the impact of industry and the protection of personal data. These are good beginnings of debates, and I think that when we start working, we'll be able to see where it goes. Another colleague has suggested also that the Ethics Committee also be looking at this issue, and so the agreement between the parties, if I understood correctly, it would be that we would first of all study both other motions that have been adopted before going on to this one. I think it might be opportune to adopt this one today, even though it is general in nature. And then we know that it'll go into ethics also, and then we can always get back to amend it if it needs to be more relevant. But I think it might be a good idea to adopt this motion today. And according to what I've understood, it will be studied in the last part of the fall session. Thank you very much.
Merci, Monsieur Saint-Marie.
Thank you, Mr. St. Marie.
Therefore, in front of us, I think everybody has had this one for several days now, as it was presented to us last week. Same process, looking around the table to see if anybody has commentary. Madame Dancho, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Certainly, I'm looking forward to this study. I think it's an important area for the Canadian economy. Much change to come, I think, in the next few years because of AI. So certainly critical for industry to review it. I think Monsieur Saint-Marie touched on this, but I believe the Ethics Committee may be actually prioritizing an AI study. So once we are through the initial Liberal Conservative studies, and this one would be next on the docket, I would just suggest a sort of a friendly suggestion that we take another look. The Ethics Committee should be concluded, and so if there's different areas of focus, or we can narrow it or expand it to fill the gaps to complement the ethics one, and ensure that our committees broadly are reviewing everything that needs to be reviewed, that we would just commit to doing that to ensure there's no duplication and to ensure that we're covering all the critical areas that we need to from an industry perspective on AI. So not an amendment. We'll be supporting this for sure, but just want to ensure we're checking back in before we begin this study to just ensure that it's not duplicating efforts from our ethics colleagues.
Thanks very much, Madame Dancho. And yes, of course, pardon me?
Got another hand.
Yeah, got one here too. Yeah. Of course, the committee is the master of its own domain, and at any point, should we wish to revisit a motion we've adopted, we certainly have the ability to do that. So appreciate the comments. I had Mr. Bardizzi, followed by Madame O'Rourke.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
amendement.
We will be supporting the amendment, and I want to thank my colleagues for their cooperation on all three studies. Thank you.
Madame O'Rourke.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président. Je voulais
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank my colleague
pour l'étude.
for the recommendation for this study, because this is AI is not a partisan issue, of course. This is a very critical aspect of our era, and we know that it might revolutionize the way we work. So it is not a partisan issue, of course, but it is very useful to look at it, and we need witnesses and some conclusions to a study. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any further speakers, so colleagues will call the question. I suspect, based on commentary offered by members of all parties here, that we're going to have agreement. So I'm just looking very briefly around the room. Everyone is in favor. Okay, motion is adopted, and we will have a couple of things once we get to the end of this meeting that I want to talk about, just in terms of scheduling. Particularly now, la motion que vous avez présentée, Monsieur Saint.
The motion that you have shown us, Mr. Saint-Marie, is not a problem, of course, because this motion was presented by the Conservatives and by the Liberals. And now we have two motions at the same time, so we're going to have to just decide on the dates to use it, and then your motion will follow both of the others.
Something you wanted to raise with the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate that we have a few hours today of committee business. So I did want to bring forward another area that I think this committee should prioritize. And I have touched base with all parties on this, and there seems to be some broad agreement that this is an amenable issue to review. So I'll move the motion and then just speak briefly about it. So I move that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the Standing Committee on Industry and Technology undertake a study on financial fraud and scams in Canada, recognizing this is a significant and growing threat to consumers and the economy, to identify best practices for prevention, to strengthen Canada's anti-fraud framework, that the study examine the role of banks, telecommunication companies, and digital platforms in preventing scams and protecting consumers, the responsibilities of Innovation, Science, Economic Development Canada, the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, and the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, as well as other federal departments and agencies in enforcement, regulation, and public awareness. The adequacy of consumer protection laws, law enforcement capacity and interagency coordination, the impact of emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence, in enabling and combating fraud, best practices from other jurisdictions, such as Australia, for improving prevention and enforcement measures, and the broad economic and social consequences for Canadians. That the committee invite the Minister of Industry to appear for no less than 1 hour on the study, as well as witnesses from relevant departments and agencies, industry representatives, and experts. That the committee hold no fewer than 4 meetings on the study, and that the committee report its findings and recommendations to the House. So I would just say, colleagues, that I think we've all received the constituent complaints and calls, and probably ourselves as well, of very prevalent scams, both from voice calls, texts, emails, social media messages. It's a growing area of concern, and we have particularly a lot of seniors that are being scammed out of tens of thousands of dollars. And so Canada has taken some steps, but we're seeing other jurisdictions like Australia, in fact, is the only jurisdiction, to my knowledge, in the world that has taken action that has seen a direct decrease in the amount of scam frauds going on. So I do believe this is firmly within the industry's mandate to review. I certainly believe it would be in all Canadians' interest for Canada to improve its prevention mechanisms in this regard. And of course, I believe we'll probably touch on it in the AI study as well, but with improving greater technology advances, this is likely to be an ever-increasing issue. So I would just ask for all committee support. In terms of priority, we of course have our block Liberal and Conservative studies that we'll be prioritizing, 1, 2, and 3. But I would ask that we, rather than commit to a timeline that this has to be after that, just that we commit as committee publicly in this forum that we will look into this, and it'll be an area of focus at some point in the coming months. We, of course, have about, I think, 10 months left before June, so plenty of time. But I do think it sends a message to all of these actors as well that, of course, pay attention to industry, that this committee will be taking it seriously. And we welcome their efforts before this committee starts to take even more efforts to prevent fraud. So when and if they do appear at this committee, they have more to tell us of progress they are making. So I simply ask that we pass this motion and agree to prioritize it at some point later on.
Okay, thank you, Madame Dancho. So, colleagues, we've got a motion that's been moved. We enter again into a discussion. Should there be those wishing to speak? Monsieur Saint-Marie, j'ai vu votre main.
I see your hand, Mr. Saint-Marie, followed by Mr. Gouget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sujet hyper important.
Obviously, this is a hugely important and concerning subject. Like Madame Dancho says, we all have people in our ridings who have been victims of these frauds. We need to change things. We need to harden the line faced with the frauders, and we have to make sure this sort of thing happens. So I think that this subject is hugely important, and I would be in favor of such a motion. However, there are 2 elements to be considered. First of all, we would have to look at, we would have to talk to the Finance Committee, because financial fraud, of course, is more their domain. And this, of course, it's relevant to us as well. And also, because of the short delays that we've had, I haven't had enough time to consult my entire team to find out whether we need to modify the motion as is or modify it. So, but I do, of course, reiterate how important this subject is, and that the parliamentary committees should study this issue. So it can, of course, be the responsibility of finance, but I would like to vote but we cannot vote on it right now because of the short delay, but it could be for the winter. But of course, I naturally believe that the committee should be dealing with this hugely important subject. Thank you.
Mr. Baines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks again to my colleague for introducing another important study to the Industry Committee and Technology. This is a critical study on the growing threat of financial fraud and scams in Canada. And as we know, these crimes are not just financial. They devastate lives, they erode trust, and they undermine our economy. This study is necessary to protect Canadians and strengthen our response. Financial scams are surging in this country. In 2024, victims lost more than $638 million, a 10% increase from the $578 million in 2023, with the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre processing a record 108,878 reports in 2024. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Experts estimate that only 5 to 10% of frauds are actually reported, meaning the real cost is likely in the billions. Reported losses since 2021 have now surpassed $2 billion. And this year, as of June 30th, 2025, we've already seen 24,411 reports processed, 17,094 victims, and $342 million in losses, trends that show there's no sign of slowing from 2024. So these scams come from phishing texts, romance scams, AI-driven deepfakes. Criminals are finding new and increasingly creative ways to exploit people. I'll highlight for the committee one example from somebody I know personally, a man in his 70s. So what ended up happening to him is he got a virus on his computer, which told him to contact a number where the people he was in contact with spent the next 7-8 months convincing him that they worked for the FBI and he should drain all his life savings and transfer them over to him. So, I mean, they, in this case, targeted an elderly individual who's by himself, but so, of course, people have been targeting the elderly, but also we've been seeing a rise in investment scams for 55 and under, as reported. So just to echo what's already been said here before, it's a very important issue and one that I think we can find bipartisan cooperation on, and it's very serious that we undertake it. So thank you.
Thanks very much. Mr. Baines, the floor is yours, followed by Mr. Saint-Marie, suivi par Madame O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to echo my colleagues across how important this study is. And we had the commissioner in last week. I had the opportunity to raise this with them. I heard from the Banking Association, Canadian Banking Association, on the issue of $638 million, and we heard from the commissioner how that is just maybe what's being reported. I also have a story. My father-in-law was almost a victim of this, but my wife intervened, and I think there's a large transnational component to this that we need to also look at. Maybe include some of that language in here and make sure that those agencies are also included. There's the issue of the different applications and the companies like Meta and others that probably should be included in this as well. I think that they can, of course, be witnesses to this kind of study. I think when you look at the victims that are being targeted, we have an aging population. I think that's really important to see that those protections are in place. So I welcome this study. I think on our side, I hope we can support this as well, and maybe just ensure that some of the language around transnational threats and having other jurisdictions be included in this, and see how we can combat this. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Baines. Monsieur Saint-Marie.
Mr. Saint-Marie. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to add for all of the members, if there was a support for this motion, of course, I would join it with pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Madam O'Rourke.
Already issued a warning to the community about the prevalence of these types of scams. We see them happening on a quasi-daily basis. It's my understanding that police departments are overloaded with these, and I think we have an important role in both raising awareness and trying to find proactive ways that a whole range of businesses and organizations can help prevent these types of scams that have, beyond the statistics that are shocking, real impact on people's daily lives in communities. So it's wiping out people's retirement savings. And it's not just older people, right? So I received a phone call one day in the middle of doing a whole bunch of things, and sort of a couple minutes in, I realized what was going on and hung up. But it could be anybody, and we need all the generations to be aware so that they're talking to their parents and they're talking to one another and they're being proactive in preventing these types of scams. And to Monsieur Saint-Marie's very good point, I think Bullet 1 has a broad enough range of businesses and business types to make it not exclusively the jurisdiction of the Finance Committee, because Ms. Dancho is talking about banks, telecom companies, the digital platforms. Bullet 3 talks about law enforcement capacity, which is really critical. And so I'll be happy to support this. Again, right, this is what we're here for in committee, nonpartisan, constructive work that's going to benefit Canadians. So thank you very much for bringing the motion forward.
Merci. Madame Dancho.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad to hear the broad support for this. It's really, I think Madame O'Rourke summed it up really well. I think we can study things that we all agree need to be addressed in a nonpartisan way, so I appreciate her comments. I did want to just mention Mr. Baines raised an excellent point about sort of the foreign aspect of this, and it's a good point that it's not listed explicitly, but I think we can make a friendly understanding that if there's witnesses, that would clearly fall under the area of this study, and I'd be happy to see recommendations included on that. And to include that, because that's an excellent point. The last thing is more just a friendly public service announcement for our colleagues. I meant to mention this earlier, but my constituency office really recently did get a call that said RBC Banking as a caller ID. That was not, in fact, RBC Banking. So that inspired some of this as well, and to just call on the telecommunications companies to explain what they can do to prevent that. Thankfully, my staff were quite savvy and sort of, their spidey senses tuned in that there was something going on, but they said it was quite convincing otherwise. So just be forewarned at your offices, they're not immune, unfortunately, to this either. So thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate everyone's helpful comments on this.
Mr. Gugelmin?
Yeah, just one more point in response to Ms. O'Rourke. You triggered something that I wanted to put on the public record, and that goes to the investment scams. Beyond individual losses, like the $310 million mentioned before, there's been a huge uptick of investment scams, and I believe it's 23% of Canadians say they have been approached by fraudulent investments last year, which is a 5% rise. And then 46% spot dubious opportunities for investments on social media. So beyond the calling and even the sophisticated ways with caller ID, as Ms. Dancho just mentioned, the online world is very intrusive to people. I've even seen myself ads on YouTube from our Prime Minister offering investment advice. So, it's fraudulent ads, yes, fraudulent ads. We think. So it's a widespread problem for sure, and it's something that I think we can highlight to the public that we are taking seriously, because part of the issue with the economy is consumer confidence, it's investor confidence, and if we can take measures to demonstrate that we're acting in a very constructive and serious way, I think we can inspire some of that public trust back. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, colleagues. So, hearing certainly a consensus build. So, just quickly, Monsieur Saint-Marie, je n'étais pas clair exactement. Vous êtes...
Mr. Saint-Marie, I'm not quite clear. Do you agree? Yeah.
Any opposition? Looking around, as we've done a few times this morning. I see support unanimously, so the motion is adopted. So, colleagues, unless some of you have a surprise up your sleeve, I think that was all in terms of what was intended this morning, which means I would like to get to a couple of other things quickly, if I may. One is that I have to bring forward a motion just for the committee to adopt our budget for the briefing sessions that we had with the CRTC and the Competition Bureau. These were sent to everybody. Looking around the table just to see if there's any opposition to the adoption of the budgetary motions. Seeing none, we will adopt both of those. So, colleagues, the next kind of big thing that we have to figure out is just how we want to schedule the concurrent studies that we have now adopted. This is the study that Madame Dancho put forward last week that we adopted, and the study that Mr. Bardizzi put forward. What I'm going to do is suspend very briefly. Here's why. I would just like the representatives from each party to speak over here with the clerk and the analysts so that we're just all on the same page in terms of finding out what's going to be the most effective and efficient way of scheduling this, see if we can come to a very quick agreement, which I imagine we will, and then we will come back publicly here and have a general consensus, I hope, about what that schedule looks like. So just to summarize that, I'm going to suspend. We're going to talk to the analysts and the clerk, the reps from each party, to determine what the schedule of this concurrent study is going to look like. The last thing I will say is, now that we have substantial orders of business in front of us and a path forward, please make sure as soon as possible that you're starting to get your witness lists with contact information into the clerk and the analysts. Very difficult. Often what happens, of course, is we have a meeting on a Wednesday, we have 5 people whose names are there, but 4 of them aren't available. So what we want to make sure is that we have a really solid critical mass of people ready to go so that we have that maneuverability when necessary. So I'm going to very quickly suspend, and we'll try to get some agreement on a schedule for these 2 studies, and we will report back very soon. Thank you. here is the plan moving forward. So the first hour on Wednesday of this week will be, as we had agreed upon previously, the CRTC officials to come and talk about their mandate and some specific decisions that I know members are eager to discuss. So far as the schedule is concerned moving forward, it's going to look like this. We're going to have a rotating schedule of the two motions that we have passed on productivity and on industrial defense policy, et cetera. This will be dependent upon the availability of witnesses. So, for example, if one study is not able to accommodate the witnesses that would be needed for an effective or an efficient meeting, we're not going to just burn that meeting. We're just going to go back to the other study, assuming that they've got enough witnesses, so that we keep the ball rolling. The consequence, if you will, of running concurrent motions is that it will take the analysts more time to provide a draft report back to the committee. So we should anticipate that it will not be until about December that we get draft reports. So please temper your expectations in terms of reports back to the House on either of those two studies prior to us rising in December, because it's just simply not possible doing it concurrently. Which study we begin on Wednesday in the second hour is going to be dependent upon, as I mentioned a moment ago, the availability of witnesses, but there was agreement amongst party representatives that that is okay. And then there is agreement, even though we have not passed a specific timeline, but to state publicly on the record that when we have concluded the two studies before us, we will move to Monsieur Sainte-Marie's motion on AI, notwithstanding legislation that is presented to us or something else that requires our immediate attention as a committee. But the plan is that should members put forward new motions for study from this point forward, we are honoring Monsieur Sainte-Marie's study as being third in the queue, as I said, assuming we don't have any other urgent legislative or political matters before us. So I don't think this is going to require any type of formal vote, but I'm just looking around the table to ensure that there's no further commentary on any of this. Okay, just before adjourning, colleagues, I do want to comment quickly on one thing, and that is for the 4 Canadians that are watching the live feed of the Industry Committee right now. I think it is really important to note how well we have started here in terms of just building consensus. Each party, of course, is elected by its people to, members of parties are elected by its people to come to Ottawa and advocate, but to work so cordially and productively, effectively, efficiently together in order to ensure that these interests that matter wholesale to Canadians across a variety of topics can be elevated to the floor of our discussion here at Industry, I think is really important. So I want to provide my gratitude and thanks to the representatives of all parties and all members for their willingness to work together quite promptly to make sure that we've got some important business before us. So with that, colleagues, meeting adjourned. I'll see you in a few days.